This may seem like my story, but it's not. It's about my people, the Nubian people. My name is Fikri El Keshev. I'm just trying to hold on to the memories I have, maybe trying to revive them in the only way I know. In 1952, the monarchy was overthrown and Gamal Abdel Nasser, with his military regime, took over. One of his greatest projects was to build the Aswan Dam in order to provide electricity for the entire country. It was meant to push Egypt into the 20th century. The largest man-made lake in the world was created, and everything south of it was flooded. The Egyptians called it Lake Nasser, the Sudanese Lake Nubia. 46 villages were moved to Komombo, 46 Nubian villages. 100,000 people transferred to a land that was no longer on the Nile. It was the end of Nubia. My earliest memories are of the temple of Abu Simbel. My village lay on the opposite bank of the river, and the temple dominated the landscape. It was a presence in our lives, reaching deep in our collective subconscious. It was there that I first became aware of being a Nubian. Now, the village is under the lake, and there is nothing left. It is time to go back home.
Gashade wenga to daris kella men jadene dure logo wenga gashade wenga to daris kella men jadene dure logo wenga gashade wenga to daris kella men jadene dure logo wenga gashade wenga to daris kella men jadene dure logo wenga gashade wenga to
في مقولة بتقول إن رمسيس لما حب يعمل معبد جميلة نفرتاري زوجته اختار المنطقة اللي فيها النهارده معبد أبو سمبل. جمع الفنانين من الوادي كله وسكنهم في الشرق في فريق اللي هي قصاد معبد أبو سمبل، وبعدين يعدوا كل يوم يروح يشتغل في المعبد، ولذلك طلعوا كلهم فنانين النهارده. أبو سمبل بتعتبر مركز الفن في النوبة خصوصا الأغنية.
Since the story of the temple is also the story of my village, I went back there as a tour guide after my studies. Every day I would tell tourists about Ramses II and how he chose this area to build his temple, which was to become one of the ancient wonders of the world. I would decipher for them the writing on the walls about his battles and his conquests. In a way today, I feel like I am fulfilling my mission, recounting the saga of my people. So maybe it is here that I should start.
بعد التهجير حصلت فيها إضافات كتير. قبل التهجير كانت الحياة بسيطة وعايشين حياة رومانسية جميلة، أشجار ونخيل وعصافير وسواقي.
البشرية كلها بتنشر السلام والمحبة والأخوة والتصالح والتسامح. هذا موجود في المجتمع النوبي. المجتمع الوحيد أنا بقول إن على ظهر الأرض، ولذلك ممكن أن تسمى اليوتوبيا أو الجنة المفقودة.
I was 9 years old when they forced us to emigrate. My land was lost forever. So I traveled the world searching for a haven to fill the emptiness I felt. But as the years went by, I realized I was losing ground. I needed to return. I sometimes wish that I belonged to the generations that never knew before it happened or born years later. But I was born in this one and feel that I have a responsibility to preserve our memories and our culture. I owe it to my family, to my ancestors, and to our children. It took me 8 years to build this house. The first priority was to build near the water, because we are people of the Nile. But on a personal level, I wanted to be close to the temple. So it was there that I bought my land. Each time I had a little savings, I would add a stone. Few people believed I could do it, but I just kept building, designing it completely in the Nubian style, as if I were recreating a piece of Nubia. The house is now finished. However, its real purpose has yet to come true. Looking at these people tonight and how they got together during the preparations, I'm glad I persisted. When they arrived from their different villages to give me a hand, it was already like the old times. Whenever there was any big occasion, people used to come from all over to help. This revival of our traditions was what I was aiming for. But this house has many more roles to play. I wanted to be a real cultural center with Nubian music, painting and books, portraying the way these people used to live and their history in the Nile Valley. It's not just about one night or one great party.
شايف ان دور والدي في التعريف عن النوبة شايفه ان هو رسول بينقل الثقافة اللي هو عاشها او الحضارة اللي هو عاشها بكل جوانبها الثقافية الموسيقية كل الجوانب الحياة العامة اللي كانت في النوبة القديمة بينقلها لنا كشباب. المفروض احنا هنستلمها منه وهنطلعها للجيل اللي بعدينا كمان.
زمان مثلا الفن كان بيبقى فيه مثلا مشاركة، يعني مثلا المطرب بيغني يشاركوا. دلوقتي فرقة واحدة بس اللي بتلعب على المسرح والناس القطاع الكبير او العدد الكبير مستمع.
عن طريق الاغاني القديمة دي بيحاول ان هو يوصل لنا برضو رسالة، يعني المزيكا دي كانت كذا، كانت شيء من الثقافة النوبية الأصيلة، بس بدأت تنقرض أو بدأت تندثر لعدم وجود شباب بيحاول يتابع الحاجات دي. أغنية ورا التانية هتتنسي خلاص يعني.
النوبة حياة بالنسبة لي أو حضارة. النوبة بالنسبة لي كيان، يعني طفولتي، صبايا، شبابي، كل حياتي. عشان أنا أجي أتجاوب مع المجتمع اللي بره أو المجتمع اللي رحنا فيه من الصعب.
الأغاني اللي ابتدت تظهر في النوبة بعد التهجير كانت ودانيات بتخاطب النيل، سواء كان معادل أو كان بأي شكل بيتباكى على فضل النيل. فدي يمكن كانت أول ودانيات أثرت في مشاعر النوبي من خلال الأدب اللي احنا بنتكلم عنه كأدب نوبي ظهر باللغة النوبية.
آخر ذكرى بقى كانت الهجرة سنة 4 أكتوبر 64 لما هاجرنا من هناك. طبعا نزلنا واحنا بنعيط والدموع نازل من عيوننا. ليه؟ بنفارق الحياة اللي احنا عشنا فيه سنين طويلة. فالبلاد لما بتغرق طبعا الحياة القديمة والعادات والتقاليد وكل ده هتندثر. جينا هنا في كومومبو طبعا أماكن بعيدة عن النيل خالص.
هم قالوا لنا طبعا إن بكرة هتهجروا، فابتدينا طبعا منذ أن أعلن عملية التهجير كل إنسان بيجهز أشياءه، فبتاخد انت الاشياء بتاعتها وبتتحمل على المراكب اللي هتحمل هذه الاشياء. كان في تعليمات على اساس ان البواخر ما تنطلقش من مراسيها الا نهارا، لغايه ما نتحمل الحاجات دي. فابتدى الليل يدخل، فلما دخل الليل علينا فالمراكب قالت لا مش هنمشي ونبات للصبح. الناس فرحوا انه هيبقى لهم ليله زياده في قريتهم. فتركوا اماكنهم في الباخره ونزلوا في القريه تاني وعقدوا الفوانيس وعملوها رقص واغاني للوداع. فكانت ليله من احلى الليالي، ليله الوداع للقريه، اغاني ورقص وغنى لغايه ما طلع الفجر.
When they were forced to emigrate in the early 60s, the Egyptian Nubians were moved to an area near Aswan, close to the temple of Komombo. Houses, electricity and farmland were promised. When we arrived, though, there was only desert. No houses, no drinking water, no electricity, and, the worst part, no Nile. Today, the Nubians have managed to cultivate that land and in some way replicate the old one. Far from the river, though, it is not quite the same. Part of my family lives here, and I pass by them whenever I can.
المرحوم جمال عبد الناصر بيسأل النايب بتاع الشعب اللي هو ماهر اسماعيل الله يرحمه، بيقول لك النوبة القديمة أحسن ولا الجديدة؟ بيقول لك أمك أحسن ولا خالتك؟
لا، ما كناش فرحانين، طبعا كنا زعلانين. هي بلدنا كان أحلى بلد، مش مبسوطين هنا يعني، مش مستريحين، بس غصب عننا هنعمل ايه؟
النوبة القديمة زي أمي والجديدة زي مرات أبويا.
لا، في فرق كبير بين هنا وبين هناك. طبعا احنا حياتنا احنا هنا كنا صغيرين، كان في مرح وفي لعب وفي حاجات كتير. هنا طبعا جينا دخلنا في العمل والشقة والتعب.
لا، الفرق يعني البلاد صحراء، هنا كان النيل والنخيل.
We had to leave. The memory of that day still burns in my mind. That day, when we walked out of our house, I thought I was the last one to leave. My mother and grandmother walked out and I followed them down to the river bank towards the boat that was to take us away. They were talking together and did not notice me. We passed the areas where I used to play, where once the people used to gather, and now there was no one, just empty roads and houses. The silence of those familiar areas terrified me. But my mother was unaware of my tears. When I got to the boat, I found out that my grandfather was nowhere to be seen. They told me that he had gone back to the house, sobbing, just to see it one more time. He was the last one to leave our village.
ما فيش ولا أي حاجة، ما كانش في أي حاجة في الجبل، يعني كان في الجبل جبل.
لا نور ولا صحة ولا
نور، موية ما كانش فيه. كنا بنشتري الموية البرميل مش عارف جنيه ولا 50 قرش. برميل موية ما كانش في أي حاجة.
كل يوم يرمي كسناي ينجي يجوا أدو سناي كويس هل زوجي على تبغ كثير مجنون.
That emptiness, that void, can only be filled today with music, and my village of Abu Simbel was always known for its musicians. Few have remained, but one of the greatest singers still lives here. Syed Gayer used to sing with my grandfather in the old village, and I used to hide below the window to listen to them. When I arrived this time, I heard Syed was in Cairo undergoing medical treatment. This upset me, because Syed had played a major part in my musical and cultural awakening. Instead, his son Ahmed receives me. Although he is younger than myself, we are bonded by the influence his father had on us.
طول ما في قاعدة وفي موجود في فكري وأنا لازم نغني مع بعض. الأغاني الحديثة طبعا بتاخد يوم سنة أو 2 وتختفي، إنما القديم اللي احنا ما زال عايشين عليه ده اللي مش هيقدم خالص، القديم المتجدد زي ما بيقولوا يعني. وأغاني الهجرة دي اللي احنا عايشين عليها. لكن القديم نسمع له ولو عدى عليه 100 سنة. أمنيتي إن نوصل الفن النوبي الأصلي بما فيه التراث كله للأجيال اللي بعد مننا، عشان اللغة النوبية ما تتنسيش. اللغة النوبية ما تتكتبش دلوقتي ولا بتتقري. الشيء الوحيد اللي ممكن نعلم بيه الأجيال الصغيرة اللغة النوبية هي الأغنية بس، ما فيش لا بتتقري ولا بتتكتب. دي أمنيتي.
After I returned from Europe, I had one main dream, and that was to find and revive my fading culture, to find living traces of the past, Nubians that still lived by the Nile. I dreamed of visiting the land that was never abandoned nor affected by the dam. Even though Gab Suhel is such a place, it isn't what I was seeking. It's too close to Aswan, too close to the changes of modernity. I have to go south to Sudan. There maybe I can meet Nubians that feel like I do, those that wanted to return to their old villages even though they didn't exist anymore. Extraordinary men that defied their destinies. I have to do this, not only for my cultural center, but for myself. The first stop in Sudan is Wadi Halfa, 150 kilometers away from Aswan. Before Nubia was artificially divided by the Egyptian-Sudanese border, we used to travel up and down the Nile easily. Halfa is actually only 60 kilometers from Abu Simbel, but now the lake and no roads connect us. The only way to get there is by a weekly ferry boat. As the Egyptian Nubians were transferred to the area of Komombo, the Sudanese Nubians went to New Wadi Halfa. But some people stayed in the old Halfa, or at least the land above their old homes. With little help, they have struggled against the odds to stay. The Nubians of Halfa have always been the most vocal, the most political about our plight. I am related to some of them, and I was curious to meet them.
ناس حلفة دغيم أكثر ناس قاوموا الموضوع ده ورفضوا زي 613 أسرة بالضبط رفضوا إنه يهاجروا لحلفة الجديدة اللي هي خشم الجربة وكونوا خلاص لما الحكومة طلعت بيانات إنه أي واحد إذا ما هاجر يقع تحت مسؤوليته ممنوع أي واحد يقع حلفة ما يكون في أي خدمات لا مدارس لا صحة لا أي حاجة من سنة 64 لغاية النهاردة أولا نحن رحلنا في 4 مراحل كل ما المويه يرتفع نعمل منازلنا بالخشب والجريد وكده أول ما المويه تاجي في المكان ده نرحل لمكان أعلى في المنطقة وبعد ذلك كانت طبعا عملية صعبة جدا جدا حكاية الترحيل وكده يعني الناس تعبوا فيه تعب شديد جدا جدا والحكومة يعني ما قدمت أي خدمات في ال 40 سنة لغاية النهاردة المنطقة ده منطقة مهمشة ولذا يعني قدمنا للأمم المتحدة يعني إنه في ناس في وادي حلفة قاعدين ويعني ما عندهم أي مصادر بتاع حياة ساعدونا الناس الأمم المتحدة واليونيسيف ساعدوا في إنقاذ آثار النوبة لكن ما ساعدوا في أحفاد الناس اللي عملوا آثار النوبة دي أحفادهم ما ساعدوه ولذا نحن يعني ال 40 سنة يعني كان 40 سنة إجاف بالنسبة للمواطنين وكده.
One of the people in Wadi Halfa that decided to face the rising waters of the lake is Naima. Mubarak told me about her and that she was to visit his house that night. In the old land, women were naturally part of any celebration, but now there are fewer female singers around. Here, Naima arrives and immediately leads the song and dance. Joining them that night, I became again in some way that little boy in my old village of Abu Simbel. The journey must continue, and the only way to go further south is either by the Halfa Khartoum train or by a dirt road inland. Nobody travels by boat anymore, and it's impossible to even find one. But I know that if I really want to pursue my quest, I need to travel on the Nile. Finally, an old fisherman named Abdel Aziz is willing to take us down as far as the cataracts will allow us to pass. I think in some way he also wants to relive the the Nile. When I was very young in the old village, I would sometimes overhear visitors entranced by the beauty and serenity of our land speaking to my grandfather. I remember one saying, "You folks speak of leaving for the city, but I tell you, what you have here, you will find nowhere else." It is what most people are desperately seeking. On our boat trip with Abdel Aziz, we glide along the banks of the Nile watching the ibis against a background of desert dunes. The scenery is breathtaking, yet there is no sign of human life. Finally, a couple of hours down the lake, we see this group of 3 fishermen. They built this little shack between the plants they grew, and in that way lived off the land and water. They have so little here, and yet they seem so content. I marvel at how stubbornly they cling to their roots, creating something of their own. We stay for tea before continuing our journey down south. I feel that finally my real trip has just begun.
والله هو نحن بس ما في ناس كثيرة، ناس زارعين بالشرق وبالغرب يعني محلات معينة ما ناس كثيرة، في 3 4 واي كده.
ناس القدام كانوا قاعدين هنا مثلا
جدودنا. البلد القديمة طبعا هو كان في زارعين الفواكه هنا والبلح وكده، يعني بلد كانت حلوة جميلة شديد، والناس كانوا قاعدين هنا فوق النيل وبتاع. لكن هسه طبعا البحر لما جاء غرقهم هو جو هاجر كلهم، ما في البحر ده ما كان المويه يمشي فوق.
Arasha is in the last area that divides the lake from the river. Most of the inhabitants here have emigrated, but some have come back. Apart from the farmers and fishermen we met on the way, this is the first place where I can see houses that survived the flood. They're in ruins, but at least those that came back could see remnants of their old life.
اسمي عبد المجيد محمد ديشاب، من مواليد سنة 1945 في هذا المكان، البيت المهجور واللي هو اتهدم بواسطة المياه بتاعت السد. الحنين كان بجرنا لهنا، لذلك بعد أنا اشتغلت يمكن موضوع بتاع 31 سنة في الجيش، تقاعدت برتبة العقيد، اضطريت إنه أجي في هذه المنطقة. رجعت تاني لهذه المنطقة عشان أقدر أعمر، عشان أقدر أعمل حاجات، عشان أقدر أزرع. المنطقة دي كلها تقريبا أرض بقت زراعية، لكن إن شاء الله نحن مصرين بأنه نحن لازم شنو نعيد سيرتها الأولى ونستزرع كل المنطقة دي على أساس إنه الجيل الجاي بالنسبة لنا يستفيد.
One of the main things that drew me to this place was a poem I had read by Ibrahim Abdo, who wrote about his old home and the loss he felt. When I knew that some people from his village had come back, I made it a point to stop here. We talk about their difficulties, but what I find interesting is their usage of certain Nubian words which are lost in the new land. I was hearing them here for the first time. The village of Melek El Nasser, for me, is a legend. Like Arasha, my visit here isn't a coincidence. I had also heard a story about its legend, about this one man who on his own refused to leave and managed to create an entire village. This one man became a symbol of resistance, and his children kept the legend alive. My visit with them is too short. I really wanted to stay with them longer, but I know I still have to go on. Maybe one day I will be able to return. If I once thought that the Nubian culture was disappearing, the people of Melek El Nasser proved me wrong. Here, it's definitely being kept alive.
فلما الحكومة أصرت بأنه تودي الناس في حلفة جديدة وما تعمل بدائل خلاف حلفة جديدة، طبعا أصر وقعد هنا في المنطقة. وبعدين طبعا غالبية الناس أو كل الناس في ما جاء بجوار شمال ملك الناصر جنوب ملك الناصر هاجروا إلى حلفة جديدة، وهو تبقى براء هنا فترة من الزمن وعانى الكثير، حتى لدرجة في فترة من الفترات جو المسؤولين قالوا له يا أحمد خيري ما ممكن نحن نخليك براك هنا في المنطقة دي، وفي لا في أمن لا في صحة، فلازم نوديك في حلفة وادي حلفة على أساس تقعد مع أهلك هناك. فهو قال لهم يا إخواننا ربنا لما نزل أبونا آدم وأمنا حواء في الأرض كان منزل معاهم دكتور وبوليس، الزوج 4 نساوين وفاضلة منهم الموجودة دي، وخلف ما شاء الله من الأولاد والبنات 17 والموجودين الحسة حاليا قدام. الأولاد اتزوجوا والبنات اتزوجوا، والأولاد والبنات اتزوجوا وخلفوا الجيل اللي قدامنا ده. من أحمد خيري براو بقينا الليلة 100، وبرضه الزواج مستمر بين الأولاد وبين البنات.
I find them to be genuine Nubian musicians. What songs I know, I sing to them, and they do the same. There's so much to learn from people who, against all odds, choose to remain on their land. 3 generations later, and they're all still singing in unison. Ahmed Kheri's dream had turned into reality. As we continue up the Nile, I remember the story of Shamandura, written by Abdel Hamid Qassem. It spoke about the first immigration in the 1930s with the building of the small dam. Some time ago, I had taken the book to my father, who was living in Switzerland, and urged him to read it. For 3 days he was so enthralled that he couldn't put it down. Then he confided to me that he identified completely with the main character. In Shamandura, Qassem tells the story of all the men of my father's generation and what they lived through. The wound is still open. What I suffer today, my father suffered before me. And so it continues.
ده مع البلد ده زي زي عم كده. البلد ده الواحد ما يقدر يمشي منه ابدا. الواحد يرجع تاني هنا، الواحد ما يقدر يسيب البلد ده يمشي حتى ربع احسن من يمكن اي بلد كده. ما اعرفش المصيبه ده شنو. والبلد ده انتم مش عارفين ما في مواصلات، لكن احنا قاعدين هنا الواحد يحب البلد ده ما اعرفش كده ليه.
احنا نشأنا في البلد ده وكبرنا فيه وترعرعنا فيه، ونزلت اتفاقية السد العالي زي الصاعقة فوق راسنا.
أنا ما أشجعك، أنا ما شاركتك بس كشيء.
أنا كمان أشاركه. احنا قعدنا هنا في البلد ده عشان مش عايز أسيب البلد ده عشان نحب البلد. في جيل بومبر. أيوه. دكتورنا. أيوه. عمي جواني. نبوكي قد. لا تاكي شوفها مدام يوسي تاكي يقولي الناس كيلو ما نقولوا شقيتو. ايوه انا ما يسمع تاكا كل كتب من شنو يقول كريم ما يشري فالي قال لك
وكانت هجرة مشؤومة بكل أسف، وليه يوم النهار ده في هجرات عكسية. في ناس مشت هناك بترجع هنا تاني في مسقط الراس، وانا برضو منهم.
صلي جمالك بيكيغا أقفو تجي ونسلي
المزيكا بتاع امبارح مزيكا نوبية، لحن نوبي، اللحن نوبي. يعني انا ما بتأثرش الموسيقى اللي بسمعه كده، إنما بتاعت أمس كان في تأثير كبير، ذكرني بالنوبة وأهل النوبة لحد يعني ما عيني أدمع. وليلة كانت ليلة نوبية، وسط عاداتنا زمان كانت كده.
Galal is from Kolob, a village which is south of Malek El Nasser. Although the people of Kolob were also forced to emigrate, several families stayed. They had each other for support and, in defiance of all hardships, remained. Galal is one of them. He reminds me of a great uncle of mine who was very dear to me. The same mane of white hair, the same hearty laughter, and also a similar repertoire of stories. It's amazing to find a zest for life so strong that it remains untouched even at his age. From the village of Arasha onwards, I finally see the familiar palm trees of my youth. Nubian life has always centered around them. When a man came of age, his status was established by the number of palms he possessed. As we continue up the Nile, I start to see more and more farmers on their way to cultivate the land, and the villages by the Nile appear increasingly larger. Finally, when we reach Cerc El Mato, I find what I was looking for. Here was the Nubia that was never flooded, where I was to find the closest thing to my old memories. It then dawned on me, the true meaning of my odyssey up the Nile. The old Nubia wasn't found in the lands that were never flooded, but in the people that I met along the way, those pioneers that went back tracking the past. In many ways, they were even more authentic than the people that had never faced the hardships, because to be Nubian today is to know about losing your land and hanging on to revive the memories. Revive them until they become very much part of the present.
ده البيت اللي آوى الأسرة كلها اللي تربيت فيه أنا وأبويا وجدي يعني ذكرياتنا كلها في هذا البيت.
Mohammed Wardi is our teacher, not only as a Nubian poet and singer, but also as our tie to the Arab-African culture through Sudan. When he started to sing in Arabic, he took the Nubian music to the Sudanese, and it was the first time we heard our songs in Arabic. He is the link between South and North.
سنة 64 أنا زرت البلد والناس على أهبة الرحيل، فمريت في قرية جنوب حلفة، قرية اسمها الجمي. لقيت أطفال قاعدين، فوقفت العربية وسألتها انتوا ليه قاعدين هنا؟ قالوا نحن بنجي هنا كل عصرية لأنه الأولاد اللي كانوا بيلعبوا معانا هاجروا ونحن لسه ما هاجرنا، فلذلك بنحيي ذكراهم وبنجي نقعد هنا في كل عصرية نكرر ذكريات مع بعض. فدي أثرت تأثير كبير جدا علي.
The main link that connects the Nubians, and always has, is music. It's through song that people express their love, tell stories of the Nile, the fields and the nature around them. The Nubian sings while he's working, when he's on the boat, when he gets married. Often the words are the same, but the rhythm changes. With my music, I feel that I was able to give back the token I was given, even though nothing could really repay what I gained from my encounters with the people. I had tried not only to sing to them, but to recreate the evenings that used to be. I know that in places like Malek El Nasser or Wadi Halfa, they still sing whenever they get together. But I like to think that those evenings we shared along the Nile were one more reason to celebrate. I could tell that the people missed it. But it wasn't only important for them. I needed it, even more than them.
وأنا خلاص خلقت مغني نوبي، يعني الموهبة الغنائية جاتني من الصغر خالص. يعني الحياة زيارة وفوار، الحياة زيارة
الحياة زيارة والعمر.
أنا بعرف إنه في فنانين سواء كان في الشمال أو في الجنوب هم ناس يعني أولا معتزين بنوبيتهم وبلغتهم وبيحبوا بعض، يعني بيحبوا يكونوا مع بعض. من ضمنهم يعني في فنانين في الشمال خالص زي الأخ فكري كاشف، زي صالح عباس، زي محمد منير، يعني متأثرين بالغناء النوبي وبالغناء الخماسي السوداني.
There it is. I have attained the source. It's here in Khartoum that I end my quest for Nubia in Sudan. Wardi embodies the voice of the Nubians, and although he was exiled for many years, he has finally come back to the land of his ancestors. My meeting with him closed this chapter. Now I'm ready to go back home. But it then occurs to me that if I really want to close the circle, I have to make one last call to see again the one person who is the link to my youth and my village. Someone who belongs to my past, when I first heard the songs I sing now and discovered what it really meant to be a Nubian, the only one still alive from that generation. I have to go to Cairo and meet Syed Gayer. It was to be the last occasion we would sing together, but I didn't know it at the time.
وانا بسن 13 زي ما قلت، ناس داوود والناس الكبار الفنانين وبرسي وعليمته والجماعه دول ومكتشله دول طبعا الفنانين لما كانوا بيقعدوا في الديواني كده يغنوا، طبعا كبار واحنا صغيرين 13 سنه كده، كنا نقعد كده على الجنب ونسمع الاصوات داوود مكتشله، اصوات طبعا اصوات جميله واصوات مختلفه طبعا. في سن 19 جيت قعدت معاهم، لان انا كنت متاثر من البدايه من داوود، ولما رجعت جيت قعدت معاهم تاثرت اكتر ومشيت في الفن. نفس الحكايه بالنسبه للجيل اللي بعديه، بيقعدوا معانا من كترة القعدة ومن كترة الحفلات والبتاع، فمشوا. يعني فكري وهو صغير كنا بنقعد عند الشيخ داوود طبعا جده، وهو صغير كان يجي يقعد ورا البتاع يقف في الشباك ويسمع الأغنية. كان غاوي، يعني الفن ايه بدأ في معاه من صغره، وإعجابه بالمجموعة دي. نفس الحكاية الأجيال اللي بعديها.
I don't think that one can return to a utopia, otherwise it wouldn't be a utopia. It's not just a place, it is the dream of a time and space. But going up the Nile, I came closer to my utopia. That Nubia lives on.